Let's bring in the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. Good morning to you, Mr. Vice President.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So what were your takeaways over the last 4 days?
Well, I think the whole of the Democratic National Convention was a very, very negative view of America. And there was no attention paid to two of the most important challenges that our nation faces, either during the convention or during Joe Biden's acceptance speech last night, and that is the violence that's besetting the families in major cities across this country, and the economic and strategic challenge that we face with China. Not a word about that, as far as I could tell, from Joe Biden last night and from any of the speakers. Instead, we heard that negative view, the criticism, the ad hominem attacks against the President of the United States, and all of it, with the exception of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, was bereft of any of the policy descriptions that you're going to hear next week. We're going to talk about what this president has done to revive this economy, rebuild our military, strengthen the constitutional liberties with conservatives to our courts at every level. But the Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, has been overtaken by the radical left. And while they didn't talk about it very much, their agenda is higher taxes, socialized medicine, open borders, abortion on demand, and efforts to cut and reduce support to law enforcement at a time of rising violence in our streets. And that's a choice we're going to make clear to the American people next week.
So, Mr. Vice President, we are through the DNC, and next up, the RNC that starts in earnest on Monday. And then after that, the next big political events will be the debates. There will be four, three with Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and one, you versus Kamala Harris. She's going to bring up how you guys blew the COVID response and everything else that she feels you've done wrong. What from her background and what from Joe's background are you going to bring up?
Well, look, Joe Biden has been in Washington for 47 years, and the speech he gave last night was just more of the same talk that we've heard from him and other liberal Democrat politicians for the decades. And the contrast between what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are offering and President Donald Trump, I think, is the difference between a talker and a doer. I mean, Joe Biden and Barack Obama, with their effort to raise taxes, regulate the economy, kind of spend and bail our way back, presided over the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. By contrast, in 3 short years, President Donald Trump cut taxes, rolled back regulation, fought for free and fair trade that put America first, unleashed American energy, and we saw 3 million jobs created.
Right.
And it's remarkable to think, Steve, that in the last 3 months, while Joe Biden last night said that the economy won't come back until the coronavirus pandemic is over, newsflash to Joe Biden, the economy is coming back. Under this president's leadership, with the foundation that President Trump poured, this economy has added 9 million jobs back just in the last 3 months. And the only thing that stands in the way of a full economic recovery in 2021 and behind is Joe Biden's agenda to raise taxes, increase regulation, pass his Green New Deal, and we're going to take that case to the American people.
Well, and the stock market is right on the edge of their record highs, so that's a good sign. But the unemployment is still staggering. But Mr. Vice President, back to Kamala Harris. Once upon a time, she was all about law enforcement. She referred to herself as top cop, and now look where that particular ticket is on redistributing money for the police and things like that. She has been, the mainstream media has tried to portray her as a moderate, but when you look at her record, she is far from it.
No, look, Senator Kamala Harris is a California liberal who had the most liberal voting record in the United States Senate in 2019. And her selection as Joe Biden's running mate just confirmed everything President Trump and I have been saying all along, that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left. And look, we'll talk about that. I'm looking forward to that debate more than I can tell you. But you need look no further than what Bernie Sanders said in his address at the Democrat National Convention. He conceded that many of the ideas that were considered radical, his word, radical just a few short years ago, are now mainstream in the Democratic Party. Well, I can tell you, they're not mainstream in America. The American people want a president who will support our military, reject socialism, oppose higher taxes, and they don't want a president that's going to stifle America's energy revolution. You know, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to abolish fossil fuels in this country. They're going to end fracking in great states like Pennsylvania. They're going to destroy more than 10,000 jobs right out of the gate. And that's the choice we're going to take, whether it's that debate night, every day, the next 74 days. And I think it's going to result in 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House.
Mr. Vice President, in these conditions, in a pandemic, with an economy that's taken a hit like this, with civil unrest, it's going to be a tough haul to get 4 more years. We know that. How do you handle that people, prominent Republicans like Governor Kasich, Secretary of State Powell, and now 70 other Republican national security officials are endorsing Biden? How do you explain that?
Well, look, when President Trump came to Washington, D.C., he came to upend the status quo and the establishment. I mean, the fact is that Colin Powell, who served our nation in uniform, I think he's supported Democrats in the last 3 presidential elections. No shock there. And I won't even mention some of the others. I mean, but I'm happy to take this president's record on the foreign stage to the American people in the next 74 days, because this is a president who has put America first. He's put America's security first. I mean, where Joe Biden actually criticized this president for taking out the most dangerous terrorist in the world, Qasem Soleimani, President Trump rebuilt our military. He decimated ISIS. He took their leader out without 1 American casualty. And I think most significant of all, Brian, is that this president stood strong against China. Half of our international deficit.
Mr. Vice President, why don't they see that? I mean, you're talking about William Webster, you're talking about Michael Hayden, Michael Leiter, Mike Donnelly, these people that have served under Reagan and Bush.
I can't account for it. When we came into office, half of our international trade deficit, $500 billion a year, was with China. China's military was growing. Their aggression was growing. We continued to see China flexing its muscles throughout the Asia-Pacific. President Trump announced that the era of economic surrender was over. We stood strong against China, imposed tariffs, and as we rebuild our military, reaffirmed our commitment to freedom of navigation. China's getting the message that America's going to continue to stand strong. And the fact that Joe Biden in his speech last night never mentioned China was truly remarkable. And it's also remarkable, Brian, that the Democrat nominee for President of the United States never mentioned the violence that is claiming lives and destroying property in major cities across this country. And I'm going to tell you, this president, this administration are going to stand with the men and women of law enforcement with programs like Operation Legend, where we've seen the arrests of more than 1,000 criminals in cities across the country already. We're going to bring law and order to our cities. You're going to hear about that next week. But the fact that Joe Biden didn't talk about China, didn't talk about the violence in our streets, tells you all you need to know about the liberal agenda that they're going to try and advance in the American people.
Funny that you bring that up, because the president also addressed that. Listen to this.
If you want a vision of your life under Biden presidency, think of the smoldering ruins in Minneapolis, the violent anarchy of Portland, the bloodstained sidewalks of Chicago, and imagine the mayhem coming to your town and every single town in America. You're not going to have law and order.
So when you poll people, they're really worried. They're fearful. They're scared, A, of another shutdown because they need their jobs. They need to put food on the table and pay their bills. And they're also fearful because crime is going up. They're fearful of their safety. Where do you and the president stand on these issues?
Well, you know, Joe Biden said last night, Ainsley, that, as a democracy's on the ballot, character's on the ballot. Well, let me be clear. The economy is on the ballot. Law and order is on the ballot, and the American people know it. You know, I've been traveling all across this country, supporting law enforcement, talking about the growth in this economy and this president's vision for bringing the economy not only all the way back, but building even a greater economy than the world's ever known over the next 4 years. And the contrast with Joe Biden and the Democrats are offering is astonishing. I mean, think about that. In the middle of a global pandemic, Joe Biden's first act will be to raise taxes on the American people by $4 trillion, to advance a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, to stifle American energy, and take us back to the kind of economic surrender to China and other countries that literally saw more than 60,000 factories close over the last 20 years in this country. I mean, that's the agenda we're going to take, and it's also an agenda of law and order and law enforcement support. I mean, this president believes that we don't have to make a choice between supporting law enforcement and supporting our African American families in our cities and other minority families in our cities. We have done both from the beginning of this administration. We're going to continue to do both. But the Democrats are offering a vision for this country that would crush our economy and promote the kind of policies that will result in more violence in our streets. And I think the American people know it.
Mr. Vice President, speaking of law enforcement, a couple of days ago we did a story that was broken by WIBW TV in Topeka, where at a diversity training event at the Goodyear plant in Topeka, apparently they put up a slide about what you can and cannot wear to work. Couldn't wear anything supporting Blue Lives Matter, couldn't wear a MAGA hat or a shirt or anything like that, but you could wear something that's talked about Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ, things like that. Since then, the Goodyear shares have tanked. The president has called for a boycott, and the chairman of Goodyear has tried to clarify. He says Goodyear strongly supports our law enforcement partners and deeply appreciates all they do to put their lives on the line each and every day for their communities. We've clarified our policy to make it clear associates can express support for law enforcement through apparel at Goodyear facilities. I know the president said that it sounded like Goodyear was playing politics. What do you think?
Well, I just think the American people really appreciate a president who speaks his mind and speaks out against this cancel culture the way President Trump does every time we see it happen. And the very idea that employees couldn't be expressing their support for this president, for our agenda, and I would think,
or
even
for
more
Blue Lives
importantly,
Matter,
for the men and women agenda of the Democrats, what we heard at the agenda this week, and I didn't watch much of it. Frankly, I couldn't watch much of it, but there was so much negativity, nothing but ad hominem attacks. But at the end of the day, elections are about choices, and as we convene the Republican National Convention, we're going to make sure that the American people see the choice here. This is a choice between a president who's rebuilt our military, made America more secure, revived our economy, stood by our rights, our Second Amendment rights, appointed conservatives to our courts, built a wall on the southern border, made all the incredible progress, supported law enforcement, and Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, overtaken by the radical left, with an agenda that will result in higher taxes, socialized medicine, open borders, abortion on demand, and continued calls to cut, defund, dismantle, or what did Kamala Harris said, reimagine law enforcement.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
In a way that will simply invite more violence and more mayhem in our streets.
Mr. Vice President, I saw Joe Biden on another network, and they asked, is Joe Biden getting out of the basement? And he says, when the doctors say, or when the scientists say it's safe, we'll do it. Is it safe to campaign? Is it safe, according to the Trump team, to have crowds? What are you doing going forward in the final sprint towards November 3rd?
Well, we're going to continue to respect the guidance of state and local authorities. The good news is...
So is that an excuse he's making up because he doesn't want to campaign? Because you're out there, President Trump's out there, you're around, right. President Trump's around the same age. So what's the truth about campaigning?
Well, it's starting to get the impression they don't want Joe Biden out of the basement. I mean, you know, the speech last night, and reading a speech on a teleprompter is one thing, but literally being out with the American people, as President Trump was yesterday, and I was in Wisconsin the day before, or sitting down with people and doing interviews and asking questions, that's part of the process. Look, we're going through a time of testing, and the American people have risen to the challenge. I hope everyone is as encouraged as we are to see cases declining in the Sun Belt. We believe that in the Midwest, because of strong actions that are taken, the cooperation of the American people, that positivity rates are leveling as well. I mean, we're every single day closer to that day that we put the coronavirus in the past. But look, we have an election. I think it may be one of the most important elections in the life of this nation, because it's a choice between President Trump's record and agenda of freedom and opportunity versus a Democrat agenda driven by the radical left and Joe Biden's vision that will result in socialism and decline for America. And I know we're going to lay that choice out. We're going to travel all across this country, and we're going to win 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House.
Mr. Vice President, what was your reaction and the president's reaction to Steve Bannon pleading not guilty over allegedly improperly spending the $25 million border wall fundraiser money?
Well, Ainsley, you know, the president actually was critical of that initiative months ago in a tweet. And I don't know any more about the case than that and what we've seen in the newspapers. But I will tell you, I think one of the great accomplishments of this president is that after years of open border policies, of a government looking the other way as illegal immigrants surged across our borders, this president has kept his word and built nearly 300 miles of border wall on the southern border. And we've seen an extraordinary reduction in illegal immigration. Joe Biden last night didn't talk much about their agenda, but we know Joe Biden and the radical left want open borders. They want amnesty for 11 million illegal immigrants.
But Mr. Vice President, they're trying to say they're trying to build the wall. Right.
And I think every American should be proud that we've done that. This president used his authority as president to secure billions of dollars to build the wall. That was the right way to do it.
Mr. Vice President, what they're saying, and critics are saying that Don Jr.'s on the website crediting them for their entrepreneurship, this whole $25 million mission, and the president told Chris Kobach of Kansas that he supports it. What do you say to both those things?
Well, what I say, all I know is what the president tweeted about it. Said months ago that he didn't believe it was the right thing to be done, and so, you know, that we'll let that play itself out. Sure. The president is very clear, but the amazing thing, remember back in the day, guys, when the Democrats fought tongue and claw against giving us any funding to build the wall that the American people voted for in 2016, and President Trump declared an emergency on the southern border, used his authority as president, and as we stand here today, nearly 300 miles of border wall constructed, illegal immigration down so dramatically, and this president is going to continue to go forward to fix this broken immigration system once and for all.
Well, the Joe Show is over, and you guys are up next. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for spending 25 minutes with us this morning here on Fox and Friends.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Goodbye and good luck.